Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State! Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar. This is your host, Nick Pollock, and I and my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, here are both smiling. One, because Penn State destroyed Iowa. Two, we're discussing our favorite quotes from the excellent television show Community. So how can you not be happy about those two things? Matt, how are you doing?
LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Bryce Harper, Peyton Manning, Tyler Warren. Do you know what all of these players have in common, Nick?
I would love for you to tell me.
They were all the first overall pick. I think people really forget that about Tyler Warren. And he came through and proved he was worthy of that selection with a two-tutty performance in the whiteout. So I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Tyler Warren continues to be so back when running backs in the NFL actually had full-time jobs and they would be on the field for basically every snap.
This is going to be so mean wherever you take this with.
Touchdown vultures were actually a thing, right? It was actually a job for a guy like Mike Tolbert to come in and steal touchdowns from LaDainian Tomlinson, whoever else was on the Chargers at the time. Tyler Warren, I think, may be the first ever receiving vulture. I can't think of a guy who gets as many short yardage touchdowns without doing a whole else lot in the open field as he does.
It's pretty wild, the touchdown breakout on the receiving end. Khalil Dinkins has one before Theo Johnson. Didn't have that on my board for this year. Tyler Warren leads the team in receiving touchdowns. Again, didn't have that on my board this year, although he is the first overall pick. People forget. It's just it's been an interesting career so far for Mr. Warren.
Yeah, it is quite something, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Real quick, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you do so on your podcast platform of choice. Leave us a 5-star review on this episode. If you also really enjoy the fact that Penn State shut out Iowa for the first time in 23 years, it really helps get us in the ears of other listeners. Like us, follow, subscribe, hit the alert bell, all that good stuff on YouTube as well. We, of course, are here to discuss Penn State's 31-0 win over the Iowa Hawkeyes in front of the second largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history on Saturday night. That was 110,830 people packed into those stands. Very impressive, especially when you consider the fact that it was raining for basically the entire game. The scoreline says enough about what happened in this one, but Penn State total yardage on the day, 397 yards, 182 through the air, 215 on the ground. Iowa, 76 yards, 56 through the air, 20 yards on the ground. Penn State had 28 first downs. Iowa had 4, and 2 of those came in garbage time. Penn State controlled the ball for 45 minutes and 27 seconds. Iowa controlled the ball for 14 minutes and 33 seconds. Yes, that is less than a quarter's worth of possession, and that is largely helped by the fact that Penn State basically had the ball the entire third quarter of this game. Matt, I just want to start off here with what were, as the clock wound down in this one, as Bo Pribula continued to slice through the Iowa defense like it was Swiss cheese, which he apparently just, that's just a thing now. Bo Pribula just gets to truck his way through defenses for the end of every game. What were some of the first thoughts that came into your mind as that clock wound down on Saturday?
Brian Ferentz is not qualified to have the job he has. I made a point that it's wildly offensive to a slew of people that he's allowed to have that job. It's offensive to the Iowa players, the Iowa coaching staff who aren't Ferentz's, all of the young play callers who could probably have that job and succeed in it. And I think that we just, I think that might have been the nail in the coffin of not only Brian, but of Kirk. I think that we're starting.
If you want to hear the loud version of what Matt just said, make sure you go listen to the Solid Verbal recap of this past week, because good friend of the pod, Ty Hildenbrandt, went off on what he thinks about the Ferentz family.
Yeah, it was bad, and the defense was offended by the idea of having to be on the field for Penn State. Nick, do you know how many total tackles Penn State logged on Saturday?
It was, Iowa only ran 20 or 33 plays, so it maybe 25 tackles?
Nick, they had less than 25 tackles. They had, including special teams, Nick, they had 24 total tackles. That's
Goodness.
unheard of. This defense, it was dominant and like played. What does that come out to, Nick? Oh my God, my quick comm math. That's under 8 plays a quarter. They were on the field for, or tackles a quarter. That's absolutely insane and unheard of. And that's a dominant defense meeting maybe the worst offense in modern Power 5 history right there. That's what that was. The defense deserved to play as little as possible because Iowa's offense did not deserve to be on the field, because Brian Ferentz did not deserve to be working that kind of game. It was a dominant performance by Manny Diaz and company, and tip of the hat to the offense as well. They controlled the clock. They played the game they wanted to play in sloppy conditions, and I think Penn State made a very big statement that is going to be overlooked because of what a great college football Saturday it was. But
awesome day.
Penn State really went out there, and I honestly think, Nick, I think Penn State had the win of the weekend. Obviously, I'm biased, but a 4-score win over a Power 5 ranked opponent is about as dominant as you can ask for.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the obvious, devil's advocate to that would be like, should Iowa have been ranked? But I see what you're saying. I know for me, Matt, the first thing that I thought of as the fourth quarter was going and as this one was coming to an end, I think my first thought was just like, this Penn State team is, I don't think we're ever going to really see them force anything. Like, they seem very happy to win however you would like them to beat you on that given day.
Yes.
Like, we saw them these last 2 weeks against Illinois and Iowa. They have been perfectly content to, say, it's fine. We don't need to take those big explosive plays today. We'll just, chew it up on the ground and chew you up in the mid-range of the passing game. Like, they're totally fine doing whatever it is that's handed to them, which makes sense with given what we know about Mike Yurcich, right? Like, we know that Penn State does really strive to be the more explosive football team, but we also know, like, Mike Yurcich's whole offensive philosophy, the whole deal with the check with me is on every single play is that they're just trying to get into what they think is the perfect response to what they see from the defense. It's not necessarily just, here's our best play, let's figure out how to make it work. They're much more about, how can we beat what we see on the defense right now? So in that regard, it makes sense that Mike Yurcich would be like, yeah, that's fine. You want to give us, Katron Allen up the gut for 7 yards? Cool. Yeah, we'll take that. That's fine. We'll do that all day. I think that was my big takeaway from this one. And the other one being, this defense is awesome. Like, they're not the biggest group. They're like, you will see bigger defenses in college football, but you will be hard pressed to find one as fast and as athletic as what Manny Diaz's unit is bringing to the field every Saturday.
And it's just wild to me how the Diaz defense loves to create turnovers and exist in chaos. It was 4 interceptions against Illinois, and then it was 4 fumble recoveries the next week against Iowa. They're getting their turnovers in different ways. It's not all one guy. It's multiple players getting involved and making these plays. It's strip sacks. It's knocking the ball loose on like extended tight end screens, I guess we'll call whatever that play was to Eric All. The defense is finding unique and different ways and relying on everybody to make plays as opposed to relying on one guy to make plays. Like, this just feels like a different caliber of team. And Nick, we can kind of get into more big picture stuff, a little bit later on. But when I loop back quick on your offensive point, can you name a time where Penn State could legitimately actually do whatever they wanted against a top 5 SP plus defense? Whatever Penn State wanted to do that night, I feel confident they could have done. And what they wanted to do was have 12-play drives. I can't really remember all that many 12-play drives in Penn State history in the last couple of years. And it feels like they can go out there on any given Saturday and produce a long, clock-killing, back-breaking drive. And it's great to see that they can do that, in a vacuum of it being one series, because they were able to go out there and do it for basically 45 minutes of football.
On that point, we should. It's very fun, so I'm going to go ahead and read Penn State's drive charts on the night. First drive, 3 plays, 1 yard punt. Then 17 plays, 50. It was too far away. 17 plays, 53 yards field goal. 3 plays, 2 yards punt. 10 plays, 39 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 31 yards, punt. 4 plays, 7 yards, punt. 2 plays, 4 yards, end of half. 15 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 12 plays, 71 yards, touchdown. 8 plays, 19 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 62 yards, missed field goal. And then the 3 play, 16-yard drive, end of game. So even on the drives where they weren't scoring, they were still holding the ball, eating clock. And yeah, you'd like to score points on every drive, but when you know that you're allowing your defense to stay as fresh as they are, and you know how much Iowa's offense struggles, the longer you can keep them out of you can keep that defense on the field, the more it's going to soften them up for later on. And that's what we saw in the second half, because it was just an avalanche once they came back on the field for the second half of this one.
Yeah, the Iowa defense looked gassed, and Penn State's offense looked disciplined, controlled, and being led by a true freshman and having no turnovers yet. Through 4 games, the only team in the country who can claim that is a unbelievable spot to be.
Yeah, and unlike, I guess there's the Caden Saunders muffed punt could have very easily been a turnover, but on the Drew Aller side of things against Illinois, probably could have been a couple picks. West Virginia could have been a couple picks, but I can't remember anything in this one that I thought, that was probably not a great decision. That could have easily gone the other way. I think it was, pretty clean overall in that regard.
He took care of the football. He had a couple of throws that were definitely tight windows. The Dinkins touchdown on 4th down was a dart. That was the only spot the tight end could get it. The Warren touchdown was in between 2 defenders, and, Tyler Warren, first overall pick, has outstanding ball skills. So it was great to see that he understands that you can make quote-unquote high-risk throws when you're that level of quarterback. That's the kind of thing I've been talking about for like 2 years about this guy. It's not the fact that he's not going to put the ball at risk. Of course he's going to put the ball at risk. But the amount of leeway his arm gives him to make risky throws is just different than we've seen at Penn State in a long, long time. And he showed it out there on Saturday. He, didn't even throw for 200 yards, I don't think, but 4 touchdowns because all of them were basically dimes. The Dinkins touchdown, the first one, dime. Second one to Warren, which is just beautiful play design. They ran the same play at Rutgers in 2022, where Clifford actually hit Tyler Warren in basically the exact same spot. So they've run that play before. The Warren touchdown was great. And then I love on 1st and goal after LeVar Woods, I think maybe had a guy fake jumping over a lineman or something like that. I don't know. Who's to say?
He did go over him.
Yeah,
he went over him.
And then just lob it up and over there into Keandre Lambert-Smith on 1st and 10, because if you wanted to, you can just run it 4 times and get a touchdown at that point. I love that he's giving Aller an opportunity to go out there and make plays. Yurcich is. So it was just a really, really great performance from the sophomore quarterback, and I don't think he's not the best quarterback in the Big Ten so far.
Yeah, we'll see on that. We'll kind of use this as the jumping off point to roll into our next thing here, just our overall thoughts on the offense. And I guess I'll start by saying, it's watching Drew Aller throw the football, particularly like as Penn State's game ended and we rolled into just, I just continued watching college football all day as I had been. Even when you see guys like, say, like Michael Penix at Washington, having an outstanding year, had an outstanding year last year, should be a top contender for the Heisman, has a fantastic arm, should absolutely be in consideration for a relatively high NFL draft spot in this upcoming draft. But even against a guy like that, who I would say has maybe not elite arm talent, but close to it, even the discrepancy between those two, the juice that Aller puts on his throws stands out. Like, it's said so often, like it's almost a football cliche at this point, but the best quarterbacks, those elite arm strength guys, are the ones that can throw those like 15-yard out routes on a rope. And Drew Aller does that like 5 times a game.
It's wild. To
the point that I'm getting spoiled with it. Like, you turn on another game, other quarterbacks aren't doing that across the country. Like, J.J. McCarthy has a pretty strong arm, but J.J. McCarthy isn't doing that. Like, this is not something that quarterbacks in college are normally able to do. And the fact that Drew Aller has the arm strength to do stuff like that is such a luxury for this team.
Yeah, it's the perfect quarterback for what Yurcich wants. Yurcich loved big arm quarterbacks when he was at Oklahoma State. And this is what it looks like in 2023. So, I'll kind of just dive into my overall thoughts on the offense as a whole. I think it was a really great idea to make this more or less a Katron Allen game. Him getting the start, him getting a ton of drives against a physical defense, I think really played to Penn State's advantage. That first drive was honestly really disgusting. That's a heck of a punting job from Torrey Taylor all night long. And I think after that, Allen really settled in and just took what he was given on pretty much every single play. Fell forward, took advantage of an Iowa front that could be pushed around late in the game. And then the change of pace with Nick Singleton to come in and had, I think, maybe one of the better runs of his career. It's not a touchdown or anything like that, but he took what the defense gave him. When he realized there was nothing left, he put his foot in the ground, went upfield, and gained more yards than he would have, I think, as a freshman. That was great.
Yep.
Offensive line, I think, did a great job in pass protection. I think the receivers did a pretty good job working to get open. There's got to be drop things still have to be cleaned up, but wet ball, gross game, I get it. And just overall, the amount of guys they got involved: Keandre Lambert-Smith, Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren, Dante Cephas, Harrison Wallace played, didn't really make all that big of an impact, but you mentioned Washington. Washington has what, Nick? 2 guys who are probably going to go in the first round at wide receiver, maybe 3?
Probably more like 1, but they have 3 like starting NFL caliber receivers.
Yeah, Penn State probably has 1 right now in Keandre Lambert-Smith. So for Aller to go out there and doing what he's doing with these pass catchers that are good, but not like that top elite level just yet, just makes it all that much more impressive. And I love that in a gross, rainy day, the passing game got to be the star with 4 touchdowns against Iowa. I tried to go back and find who was the last quarterback to throw for 4 touchdowns against Iowa. It turns out it's actually super recently. Nick, do you know who it is?
4 touchdowns against Iowa? Was Iowa in the... I don't know.
It was C.J. Stroud last year. Like it quickly turned into an activity that was over in like 15 minutes. I was pretty bummed about that. But I mean, think about it. If we're talking about Drew Aller in the same breath as C.J. Stroud, things are probably going pretty well. And I'm not saying he's at that level just yet. But again, this had the kind of game that just screamed Penn State was going to win 17 to like 11, and Penn State's running backs each have to have like 26 carries, and it just wasn't that because it didn't have to be. And that just makes this offense so much more interesting to me, that they can beat you in so many different ways.
Overall in the day, Drew Aller, 25-37, 166 yards, like you said, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bo Pribula also 1 for 3 of 16 yards. Should have been 3 for 3. Drop passes by Malik McClain and Amari Evans. So good for Bo getting out there throwing the football.
Good for Bo.
Katron Allen, 21 carries. Yeah. 21 carries, 72 yards, only 3.4 average on the ground, no touchdowns. Bo ran for 55 on 8. Singleton, 17 carries for 49, only 2.9 yards per carry. So really not an efficient day for the running backs, but it didn't require them to be efficient, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Trey Potts also 3 carries for 17 on the ground.
He's got some wiggle. Potts has more wiggle than I realized.
Yeah.
It was cool to watch him run at the end of that game.
Yeah, he's a legitimately solid running back. I could very, very much see him being a bit more involved with the game plan as it goes on, and they want to keep guys fresh and all that good stuff. Keandre Lambert-Smith led the way with 8 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on that beautifully thrown fade. Theo Johnson, 6 catches for 42. Good to see him really get involved and be more a part of the game plan in this one.
Very quiet 6-catch outing. Like I would have said somewhere in like the 3 to 4 range. Very quiet 6-catch outing. Pretty good.
He had those first 2, and then he kind of. They were kind of just like here and there, like nothing consistent from that on, but good night for him. Liam Clifford, 2 catches for 17 yards, had that really nice first down on, I think it was a 3rd down conversion. Like you mentioned, Trey Potts, Cephas, Tyler Warren had 2 touchdowns, Khalil Deckins had a touchdown, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, all those guys caught passes. So very active day for the Penn State offense again. I think it's going to continue to be a theme that we see, both because, one, Drew Aller has proven to be really good at moving through his progressions, and seems to trust everyone well enough that he's willing to throw the ball. And 2, aside from Keandre Lambert-Smith, they're still trying to figure out who those other go-tos are. Like, it'd be great to see Cephas step up as one of those guys. Harrison Wallace was becoming that, but he's had some injury stuff the last couple weeks. I think Matt said that he got rolled up on at one point in this game, said it didn't look great, so we'll have to wait and hear about his status. But overall, really nice game for the offense as far as spreading the ball around and just doing what they needed to do. And that's kind of the big takeaway for me, was that they didn't try to push and stretch to do anything they didn't need to do, aside from maybe the running backs early. Like Singleton and Catron both definitely tried to bounce some things outside that they didn't need to. They should have just, burrowed forward and gotten those easy yards rather than looking for the big stuff. But I wouldn't even necessarily put that as much on them. Is like the only thing for me was that the run blocking was mostly okay. Like it wasn't outstanding. The pass blocking by the offensive line I thought was outstanding, but the run blocking was just fine.
Olu is unbelievable in pass protection.
The one replay they showed where they showed his entire protection on the play. He's basically, I don't know who the Iowa defensive end was at that point. He's basically just holding him back with one arm.
Oh, yeah.
Like he shoves him back with the one arm, lets him bounce back, waits for him to re-engage, and then just shoves him back. It was just total, as dominating as an offensive lineman can be. It was awesome to watch. So that's it for me. Like they didn't force anything. They didn't have to. They took what was there. Aller wasn't outstanding, but he was in control. Like he made the throws he needed to make. And, the run blocking just needs to get shored up a little bit. That's been true for the last couple weeks, but overall, I thought it was pretty awesome for the offense.
They're getting there. Like it's going to get to a point where I disagree, Nick. I think Aller was outstanding. For a true sophomore to not turn the ball over against what was the SP Plus number one rated defense, like I understand that there's a lot of ideas that like Aller has to perform like a first round pick right now. He doesn't. Like he has to perform, I've said 5% better than Sean Clifford. I think he's at like 10% better than Cliff was right now, and it's taking the offense to a new level. Like I think what Aller's doing, being in command, the no turnovers. I know there's been interceptable passes, but every quarterback has interceptions that could be drop on top of the ones that actually have intercepted. Like it's just he's a different level of quarterback. Like, and again, maybe I'm just thinking too highly of him because I really want to believe in this kid. But he's like, when you see a guy go out there and play 4 games of football, 3 of them against Power 5 opponents, 2 of them against conference foes who each went to a bowl game last year, and to have no turnovers is unheard of. If I would have told you that, Nick, back in like September 1st, you wouldn't have believed me that Penn State would be the only team in the country without a turnover yet. Like, the fact that we're here just says that he's just, although the stats may not look like it, for what he's being asked to do, he's playing about as perfectly as I could really hope for. And that looks like not like, first round Heisman ceremony, stats right now. But again, in what he's being asked to do, I can't imagine doing it much better than he's doing it.
No, yeah, I totally agree. He is exactly filling the role that he is being asked to fill. 100% agree with that. I have no complaints about what I've seen from Drew Aller so far at all. He's been great. It's been really awesome to see Mike Yurcich really like open things up a bit with the offense too. Again, I've mentioned this before. I really liked what Sean Clifford was doing offensively, especially towards the end, because I just felt like his command of the offense and knowledge of the playbook allowed him to do a lot of special things. But Drew Aller, in the same way that was a huge advantage for Clifford, Drew Aller's arm talent is a huge advantage for him, and it allows him to do some very special things, and it allows Mike Yurcich to call some plays that you can't call with most quarterbacks. Like we said, like he has the arm that allows you to pretty much bust out anything you want to from your playbook, and that, Mike Yurcich has to be having just an absolute blast this year.
Oh my God, I can't even fathom.
I think somebody else who's probably having a blast right now, Matt, is anybody who's rocking or soon to be rocking the Penn State 1994 Rose Bowl hoodie from our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Have you seen it?
Dude,
it's gorgeous.
It's fire. That shade is like unlike anything I've ever seen for Penn State merchandise. It looks awesome.
Yeah. It is fantastic. If you did not see, Home Field released new apparel for both Penn State and Iowa in the lead up to this one. So it is available now on homefieldapparel.com if you haven't seen it yet. Like I said, it's an homage to the 1994 team that went to the Rose Bowl. It's just it's a gorgeous shirt. Any physical description I could give you would not do it justice, so please go check it out for yourself. And if you do check it out, if it's your first time ordering from homefieldapparel.com, you can use the code RLR23 for 15% off of your very first order. Yes, you heard me right. 15% off. It's a great deal. They have that. They also have a lot of other Penn State merchandise that's well worth your time checking out. I know we are both huge fans of Home Field. They've been great friends to the podcast for quite a while now. And, just what they do is just so unlike every other apparel company out there. And they are the premium collegiate apparel brand for a reason. There's a reason that if you say Home Field Apparel, every college football fan knows exactly what you're talking about. So please make sure you go check out homefieldapparel.com. Use that code RLR23 for 15% off of your first order. Especially make sure you check out that new Rose Bowl hoodie from the 1994 team. It is gorgeous. Something else that was gorgeous, Matt, was watching the Penn State defense go to work on Saturday night. We've talked about him a bit already, but 76 total yards allowed? Are you kidding me?
And what was it, like 18 of them came on a scamper that I think just Curtis Jacobs over-pursued on, which I get. Like, McNamara is really probably not a threat to run, especially on a bum thigh or hip, whatever his injury is. It's
I believe it's his quad.
Yeah. It sucks that, he over-pursued, but I get why he did it. That's a safe bet. If you're going to get burned, get burned. That's fine. It was dominant. This is the best defense, I think, in the Big Ten right now. They're playing at such a high level. They're creating havoc plays. The defensive ends are finally hitting their stride. Chop Robinson, who had a quote after the game talking about the Iowa coaching staff who made fun of Penn State players for quote unquote faking injuries, and Chop not even being on the roster at that point and him taking it that personally just shows that he's a different level of competitor. I thought Adisa Isaac played a great game. Amin Vanover got involved. Zariah Fisher recovered a fumble. The edge rushers here are the story to me. And Nick, I had it pulled up, and I forgive me, give me a second while I try to track it down, but it's is it 87 rushing yards total, Nick, that Penn State's given up in the last 2 weeks? It's something.
Oh boy, let's see.
Okay,
so this week was 20. Last week they allowed
67, I want to say. I think it's 87 in the last 2 weeks, which they
allowed 78 on the ground last week.
Okay, was it? Oh, okay, interesting. Was that net, including the tackles for loss as well?
That is team stat output on ESPN. That's what I got up here.
Interesting. Okay. Regardless, it's under 100 yards in the last two games against teams that, going into the year, Nick, I think we both were afraid were going to be kind of mini Michigan tests with how they run the football. Penn State's...
And can you remind me what our one question was about the Penn State defense coming into this year?
Well, first of all, it was probably if they could stop the run, if they were big enough to stop the run. And I think they've answered the bell the last 2 weeks. I think they're really starting to deliver. I think West Virginia was a great way to prep. You look at how West Virginia is winning football games, which, first of all, Neil Brown, good for you for coaching to keep your job. 3-1 with, 2 Power 5 wins is a great way to start. But that team is very clearly a very run-heavy team. That's a very run-first offense, and they're really good at it with that interior offensive line. Delaware, you take out that 67-yard run, which had a blown assignment by Tyler Elsdon, who's now kind of, serving a little bit of a smaller role moving forward, and what did they really accomplish? So I think that this Penn State front has taken a step to the next level, and we already knew the secondary was going to be dominant. And again, they really didn't have to be tested at all because Iowa couldn't, do anything like pass protect primarily. They couldn't really do that well. But this is just a unit that I think is really hitting their stride. And I'm excited to watch them tee off again against Northwestern this weekend and then see what they can do against Kyle McCord, a quarterback who I think definitely has talent in a couple weeks. But did he show me a lot against a good Notre Dame defense to make me that terrified? I mean, he threw a dart when Notre Dame had 10 men on the field. Okay, cool. I'm just getting very excited that this defense is much better than the very, very good unit I thought it would be.
Speaking of best defense in the Big Ten, I do think that that is the other team that might have a claim to it is Ohio State's defense. They've been playing very well. Shut down a Notre Dame team that's been scoring all over the place so far this year. So they definitely deserve some credit for that. It's this, and it's hard to really take too much away against an Iowa offense that's down so bad, right? I think I have in my notes here that I know this Penn State defense is really, really good. I know they're I think very comfortably one of the top 10 defenses in the country. I just am trying to figure out if I will know more before Ohio State. I don't think I will. I don't think we're really going to know a terribly much about either this defense in particular or the team in particular until we get to Ohio State. Is that fair?
I mean, you can look at it as there is the 2-game season within the season, but also like 12 games is a crazy small sample size. Like,
yeah,
we're a quarter of the way through the season. We kind of have to start drawing conclusions based upon what we've seen. And what we've seen is really, really good.
Do you think Kalen King is bored? Cade McNamara only completed 5 passes in this game. Kalen King has not had a whole lot to do this year.
I think Kalen King is bored in the kind of way where, like, you're so... Like, Nick, did you grow up with younger cousins?
I did.
Like, you're playing a board game at Christmas with your younger cousins, and they, like, don't understand, like, what the rules are yet. Or, like, Mario Party. Like, if you're playing Mario Party with, like, a younger cousin, and, like, the younger cousin, like, doesn't, like, understand, like, the A and the B button on the Nintendo GameCube.
Yeah.
Nintendo, not a sponsor, but they could be. It feels
GameCube,
like,
not a sponsor, could be, specifically.
That's true. That's a good point. It feels like that's what Kalen King kind of is right now. Like, he is just bored, but in a way that's probably really enjoyable for him.
Yeah, that's right. And he's such an active tackler too. I'm sure he's really enjoying getting to focus more specifically on that role. Matt, I want to know, what is your favorite stat from this game? There's a lot to focus on here, and it could be anything that we've already talked about. It could be the fact that Iowa was the first team in 5 years to get outsnapped by 60 plus, 97 to 33 total snaps in this one. It could be the fact that Brian Ferentz made approximately $93,000 for this game. What's your favorite here?
Oh man, the Penn State's leading tackler having 3 tackles is really funny. Like, that in a vacuum is like, what? How is that possible? What do you mean? The first Iowa shutout since 2000. I think is really really interesting. Like, that predates, like, the Washington Nationals and, like, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Oklahoma City Thunder. It predates. It predates,
don't
like,
say their name.
It predates, like, a majority of, like, the Star Wars prequel trilogy. So, like, that's, again, like, when you put it in that context, it's pretty wild. Like, for how bad, it's not the Iowa offense's first shutout because the defense scores all the time. But the fact that, like, Iowa and Brian Ferentz especially in this season, like, the 25 point per game season, gets blanked for the first time in, like, a quarter century is just hilarious. That's probably my favorite stat. The 23 years in between shutouts.
It's a big hit to the drive for 325 for sure. That is that's a brutal blow to that the greatest counter of all time in college football.
Do you think?
I was telling my wife.
Can I interrupt quick?
Yeah.
You think they're done, the Ferentz family, after this year?
No.
Really?
Really? Because I don't. They're not going to fire him. They can't fire him. Kirk will leave when Kirk wants to leave. And, I mean, I guess you could maybe make the argument that with the way the conference is about to change, maybe he might consider hanging up because now their free pass to a Big Ten championship game has just dried up. But
do you think Kirk has the patience to fly to Seattle?
I think it's probably more that this is going to maybe be one of his worst offenses. And is he going to, like, will his personal pride allow him to hang it up with the final season being one that showcased his own son's incompetence and was also the thing that held back his very good defense from being more? Like, I don't think that he'll be able to step down with that being the lasting image of himself. Like, I feel like he might give it one more go, and I think as long as Kirk is there, Brian's there, and I was not going to fire him. So I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think he's done.
Interesting. I think he doesn't understand why the offense is bad. Like, I think he views it as like, oh, the offense has been great. It's just turnovers. Well, like, turnovers are part of your offense. I never understood that. Like, Narduzzi said that after the West Virginia game, where it's like, yards were equal, but we turned the ball over. I'm like, okay, that's part of the whatever. That's part of the offense. I think, like, he's cut from that cloth, where, like, he doesn't understand why you're mad. He just knows that you're mad.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, my favorite stat is it's two things in conjunction. It's the 45 minutes and 27 seconds of possession combined with
funny.
only 3.8 yards per rush. And the reason that's my favorite thing, that combination, is because like 3.8 yards per rush is not good.
No.
Like that's not a good average for Penn State. They're not going to, I don't think, like Singleton and Allen, they're not going to be happy with that. But the fact that you were rushing the ball only relatively effectively and still controlled the ball for more than 3/4 of game time in this one shows how thoroughly you were dominating them in every other facet of the game. So just in terms of embarrassing Iowa on a national stage, because they deserve to be embarrassed. Not the kids. I'm sure they're all good kids. I hope they go on to have great careers otherwise. But Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz deserve to be embarrassed on national television as often as they possibly can.
Yes.
And that combination of things that is embarrassing for that team that hangs their hat on being able to, not let you run the ball, not let you move the ball effectively on offense. That is an absolute gut punch of embarrassment, and it was awesome.
It's going to be really funny when they go like 9-3, win the Big Ten West, and nobody learns any lessons from this. That's going to be the best part.
Absolutely it is. So Matt, what are maybe one or two big takeaways that you have from this game as far as the rest of the season is concerned? What's one that you might have?
The Penn State run defense, I think, is fixed. I feel lowercase f fixed. Like I truly believe they've taken a lot of steps. I think that the defensive tackles are a lot better. I think the linebackers are a lot better. A few plays, notwithstanding, the gap fits from linebackers were really great on Saturday, I thought. So that's my number one takeaway on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're going to hit one big run, and then I think the floodgates are going to open because I think teams might be getting a little bit bored with the Penn State rushing attack after watching what Aller was able to do when teams dared him to throw. I think we're going to see people, look at the stats and say, well, Singleton hasn't ripped. His biggest run of the year is 19 yards. He's not ripping big ones anymore. And then I think he's going to rip a big one. I think that's going to be something that's going to be really fun when it finally happens.
Yeah, I could very easily see that. It's, the season started with West Virginia saying we're going to make Drew Aller beat us, and I think the more after these last two games, like you said, teams have seen that Drew Aller's and Mike Yursich are very willing to say, okay, cool, yeah, we'll take those 7 yards and just keep moving. You're right. So eventually something is going to break. Either there's a hole for Singleton's going to be wide open, or Lambert Smith's going to get loose deep again. Like something's going to break in a very big and notable way. I think for me, Matt, my first takeaway is that despite what I've said before, I think that from what I've seen from this team combined with what we've seen in the rest of the conference, I am starting to believe that this team is ready to do the thing.
Nick, are you in the window? Are you on board?
I am starting to believe more and more. Again, at the beginning of the year, I said they were going to beat Michigan at home. I am really starting to think that they have a really, really good chance of doing that and going to Columbus and winning. So,
totally exonerated. No wrongdoing.
I don't know. We'll see. Do you have any other takeaways from this one? I have one more.
No, I mean, I kind of hit my two big ones at the top. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I still don't think they're going to go undefeated. The loss is going to be in there somewhere. I just think that it's really hard to do. But I won't make that point. I'll make that point when the time comes. I think that they can. I'd put it at 60% they beat Michigan at home, and I'm willing to move it to a toss-up. They beat Ohio State on the road.
Okay. For me, the other takeaway is, despite all that, I still don't feel like I'm going to really know what this team is until Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And that's just because of how the schedule is set up. They just haven't had to face a team that is competent both offensively and defensively yet. We've seen it happen.
The bar is competence for the Big Ten West.
We've seen it happen on both sides of the ball at times. We haven't seen it all together. Obviously, Ohio State will be the first real test of that because this week they go to Northwestern, then they have the bye, then they face UMass, and then they will go to Columbus. So we'll see in that regard. But like I said, despite the fact that I am starting to believe that they will be able to have a really good chance to run the table, I also don't really know for sure if I know what this team is, nor do I think I will until we get to Columbus. So,
do you have a win total?
That's my other take. A win total?
Yeah, you set it at 11-1. Still, what do you think is most likely then? 10-2, 11-1, or 12-0?
I mean, I think 11-1 is still most likely, but I think that 12-0 is more likely than 10-2.
Okay, interesting. All right, I like it.
Yeah. Last thing I want to discuss Penn State related here before we do a quick look around the Big Ten. I got texted this question by a Penn State buddy asking, was this the most complete Penn State James Franklin game in a ranked versus ranked situation? So, that rules out Ohio State 2016 because Penn State was outranked. For me, the other contenders that I could think of off the top, I thought of 2017 Ohio State, even though Penn State lost that game. I more so than a defensive breakdown, I feel like it was more just JT Barrett going God mode. So I thought that was a really well-played game by Penn State. 2017 Michigan is up there as well. They destroyed the Wolverines in Happy Valley. This past year, the Rose Bowl against Utah, I put a question mark there because Cam Rising did get hurt. So, Memphis, the Cotton Bowl, 2019, again, group of 5 teams, so kind of a little caveat there, but Memphis was still a very good team, and Penn State thoroughly dominated them in that one. And then I also thought the Fiesta Bowl against Washington. Now, I think it's probably fair to say maybe we should remove bowl games from this conversation because, I'm not sure. I don't remember if anyone notable sat out for Memphis. I don't remember if anyone notable sat out for Washington, but, there's always that caveat as well. So I guess the big ones for me regular season are those 2017 games. What are you thinking here?
Anytime you shut an opponent out like that and you win by 4 scores, that's the most dominant performance, ranked versus ranked, period. That may have been the best overall game. No, that's a bad way to word what I'm trying to say here. That may have been the most dominant top 25 win we're ever going to see from Penn State. Is probably the best way I would word it. Yeah, I don't think it gets much better than...
I mean, it's hard to be more dominant.
It doesn't get much better than a shutout with, a 5-0 turnover ratio or 4-0. It's hard...
4-0.
Yeah.
They fumbled 6 times. They got 2 of them back. So.
Yeah, it's hard to be more dominant than that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I would lean this one, and maybe it's just some recency bias also, because, the fact that they did only average... they didn't reach 400 yards offensively makes me think, is that dominance? But again, then there was also, they weren't necessarily trying to reach 400 yards. They were
could
just,
have if they wanted to.
They were willing to eat clock. Yeah, they could have. But, I think it probably is. But it's an interesting question. It's a fun chance to look back on some of those other performances as well. Matt, I think we should take a moment here. We talked about this kind of the state of the Big Ten a couple weeks ago. I think we should take this chance to look around what happened this week because, going forward now, we're almost basically an exclusively Big Ten play at this point after this week. So I think it's good to, do this on a weekly basis now.
Yeah.
Just really quick going around the conference. I'll just read them off and then we'll talk about, anything that stood out to you that you want to talk about from the Big Ten. Wisconsin beat Purdue 38-17. That was on Friday. Michigan beat Rutgers 31-7. Rutgers did lead in that game, scored first, but obviously did not hold it. Illinois struggled.
They covered that spread. Covered that spread.
Go
Rutgers.
Illinois struggled a bit with FAU 23-17, but they did get the win. Maryland demoralized Michigan State 31-9. Michigan State looked awful. Nebraska got on the board with a 28-14 win over La Tech. Ohio State, probably one we'll talk about here in a second, won 17-14 over Notre Dame with a last-second touchdown where Notre Dame decided that it'd be more fun to play with 10 people instead of 11. Indiana won in 4 overtimes against our old buddy Joe Moorhead in Akron, 29-27. Gutting really wanted to see Joe pull that one out. And then Northwestern won 37-34 over Minnesota, also in overtime. Northwestern trailed by 21 points in the fourth quarter in that one and came back and won. So I don't know if that says more about Minnesota or Northwestern, but certainly interesting. What from the Big Ten this week do you want to talk about?
Oh my God. September, Maryland, great. Like, take care of business. Michigan State. I'm really starting to wonder what that Ford Field Black Friday crowd mix is going to look like, especially if Penn State can clinch the Big Ten East that night. I'm very curious about that. Rutgers, competence, making progress, looking fine. They're going to scare somebody. Maryland, I think, is going to scare one of the big three pretty convincingly this year. I think Maryland's better than I think we realize. Nebraska, good, get a win. Put Michigan just in like a slop fest next week. That'll be really funny. Ohio State, man, you got very lucky with 10 players on that field there. That's a game probably should have lost, but I am very into the college football empires map. So a lot of land now comes up for grabs if Penn State can beat Ohio State in a couple weeks. I think I think the Big Ten's the big three, and then Maryland, and then maybe a really, really, really big gap.
Yeah. Maybe by the end of the year, the gap won't be so big with Wisconsin coming up towards it, because Wisconsin was always going to take a little time, new coach, new offense.
And that Wazoo team is good. I think that Wazoo team is going to look back on that loss as different than it, is thought of right now.
Yeah, Wazoo is legit. That's by no means a bad loss. So I would expect Wisconsin to maybe close the gap a bit. And, again, with Maryland, it's the same thing every year, right? Like, we'll believe that they're for real when they can do it for a full season because they, like you said, September, Maryland, they're great in September unless they play Penn State on a Friday night. But they got to prove it over a full season. That's been their struggle. Talia staying healthy, the offensive line being able to keep them upright, that's been their struggle all year long. So, I think the Ohio State game, Notre Dame game was I didn't watch a ton of it, obviously, because it was on the same time as Penn State. Like I said before, holding Notre Dame to 14 points, 351 total yards, that's impressive. That's impressive for Jim Knowles' defense. Like, I think that is probably the thing that's more scary right now to me about Ohio State than their offense is their defense. Like, they're playing really well. And I think with the offense, it's still just a matter of time. Like, I think McCord has looked a little bit better each week. Obviously, you still have Marvin Harrison and Emeka Ibuka and Julian Fleming. You got plenty of weapons. You got Cade Stover at tight end. Like, there's a lot there to throw to. So I think the offense is going to find its rhythm, even though Ryan Day is trying to cut promos by challenging 90-year-olds with dementia to fights on live television. But if that's what you want to do, man, go for it.
I think, what this weekend kind of confirmed to me? If, a carnival barker, the dunk tanks where the guy in the dunk tank's really mean to you? I think the guy in the dunk tank could convince Ryan Day to spend, $1,000 in attempts. I think that's what I learned from this weekend, is that Ryan Day can be very easily goated. And the fact that it happened to an 86-year-old on the Pat McAfee show kind of makes me think he's got some inner demons he's fighting right now.
Do you follow many Ohio State people on Twitter?
I follow Ryan. That's the big one right now because he's just hilarious. And
I'm trying. Ohio
State fans have this weird thing where they make superhero Buckeye accounts, like Boba Fett as a Buckeye, and it's really weird. Like I don't know why. Penn State fans on Twitter are famous for being weird. We have Treb, we have the Toaster, we had Real Penn Live. Meanwhile, Ohio State fans are if you don't root for Ohio State, you're supporting, the Empire. It's really weird stuff. So I try to avoid it as much as possible. What
I'm getting at is I'm curious. I'm curious what you've seen as far as the pulse of their fan base about what Ryan Day said. Obviously, they're all hyped up about winning the game, but are their fans are they ready to go to war after what Ryan Day said post game, or are they or is this just more fuel for the Ryan Day's Charmin soft that they already think is true and they just think he's even lamer after doing that?
The knock on Ryan Day is that listen, he's soft, he can't get over the hump, he was born on third base, and you whining that saying you were born on third base is mean to you doesn't really move the needle. I don't know. I think Ryan Day is going to be great as the next coach of the Chicago Bears.
Oh, we shall see. We shall see what happens there. Matt, before we get out of here for today, any final thoughts on anything Big Ten related, Penn State, Iowa related, anything you can think of?
Northwestern next week. If you're coming to the game, welcome to Chicago. It's a great city. I have a ton of recommendations. If you want like food recommendations, things to do, tweet at me at MattFlip42. You can hit me in the DMs. Same thing with the blog. If you follow the blog and you want Rex, hit me up there. And I'm excited. I have a bunch of friends coming into town. The Northwestern Nooner's a bit tough, but it gives me a shot to go to my favorite breakfast spot before the game. So I'm very much so looking forward to the game in Evanston this weekend.
There you go. Once again, we are ecstatic at Penn State's 31-0 win over Iowa. Dominated in every single facet. We very much enjoyed watching it. We hope you did too, and we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about it, because that's going to do it for us here tonight at Roar Lions Roar. Real quick, if you are not already subscribed, like I said at the top, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Leave us a 5-star review if you can. Use the Q&A feature on Spotify. Yes, we are seeing those. We're usually going to weave those questions that we see into previews rather than recaps, because that makes a little more sense just flow-wise for us. But please continue to use that. We are seeing them and respond to them when we can. And then also, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you like, follow, and hit the alert bell for all our videos so you don't have to miss any of that content, because you can see our faces and see us laughing about Iowa rather than just hearing us laugh about Iowa. It's a whole different experience. Highly recommend. And finally, if you make sure you visit homefieldapparel.com, use that code RLR23 for 15% off your first order. That is going to do it for us.
Wait. Sorry, Nick. I forgot something.
Hit me.
I got a note from Bill, and he asked me to start the pod with a statement, and I forgot about it. So now we'll end the pod with the statement. So this is coming from a friend of the show, Bill DeFilippo, not a sponsor, but he could be. He said LMAO with 31 O's regarding this game. So there's that.
Excellent. For myself, Nick Pollock, for my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, and our write-in here tonight, Bill DeFilippo, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go State.
Go State.